Hello, NOBA. Hey, this is Rick Curtis, and I'm doing this re-presentation of the presentation that I gave yesterday for your conference. So many of you asked me if this would be available online, so I'm going to put this online on YouTube so that you can reference this in relation to the presentation I gave yesterday. For those of you who watch my YouTube channel, this is a redo of a presentation that I gave yesterday at a conference of associational leaders for the Southern Baptist Convention. NOBA is a group of leaders that lead leaders, and so it's always a privilege for me to speak to the NOBA group. So I'll make this quick. I won't be as thorough as I was yesterday, but you'll get the gist of it because you were there. And I'll keep enough information in so that if you're listening to this for the very first time, it'll be beneficial to you as well. I'm talking about mindset today and how mindset changes everything that we do. Rick Curtis, that's my name. I'm assistant to the president for convention and associational relations with the North American Mission Board. And it's my honor to serve you, NOBA. For those of you who listen to my leadership lessons online, I hope you'll get something very amazing out of this mindset presentation. It is geared for the Christian, but it has applications beyond that realm. So these are Christian leaders that I'm speaking to and spoke to yesterday at the NOBA Conference. So that being said, I'm going to continue with this presentation aimed at the Christian leader. So again, all right, we're talking about the importance of mindset and how mindset applies to everything that you do, whether you realize it or not. Your mindset changes your actions. And as a leader, especially one that leads leaders, understanding your mindset and the intricacies of how that plays out in your everyday actions is very, very important. So for the sake of our conversation, I'm going to discuss our primary, secondary, and tertiary mindsets. And so your primary mindset is the main thing that you should find out about, right? What is it that you run everything through? Every conversation, every problem that you attempt to solve, everything that you do in your leadership journey runs through a system of thought and a mindset that you have, your own preconceptions. And that presuppositional mindset will dictate how you do what you do. So defining your primary mindset is of utmost importance. And then we're going to look at secondary mindset and tertiary mindset and how those apply to your primary mindset. All right, so let's talk about primary mindset. All right, so for the Christian, it's clear. We don't have a choice of what our primary mindset is, right? It says in Philippians 2:5-8, it says, if in your relationship with one another, have the mindset of Jesus Christ, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself to become obedient to death, even death on a cross. We are constantly admonished in our circles and by the Word of God to have the mindset of Christ. And as a Christian leader, one who leads other leaders, you must operate with the mindset of Christ. We examine his life, we live by what he exemplified, and that dictates our leadership journey and our leadership style. So the mindset of Christ is a non-negotiable mindset. We must operate running everything through the understanding that Christ has given us, the presuppositions that we bring to the table based on our Christian worldview, the way that we move, work, and interact with people based on the love that he's given us to share with others. Our primary mindset must be that mindset of Christ. And then we dive into our secondary mindset. What is your secondary mindset? What is that thing that you run everything through, right? Now, not to make this completely secular, but taking the mindset of Christ away, what is that second thing that occupies every decision you make, every conversation that you have? If you look at your life, what does everything filter through? What emotions, what hobby, what language, if you will, what What predominates your thinking and your decision making? This is your secondary mindset. And it's so important that you're able to define that because it has ramifications to your primary mindset. So, for example, if you understand that your secondary mindset can either magnify or diminish your primary mindset, it becomes far more important than what you've previously thought of the way you think and the values that you have and what you put stock in and that kind of thing, right? It definitely impacts your primary mindset. Your secondary mindset will determine your actions. And if your secondary mindset is informing your practice as it relates to your primary mindset, then it can be either magnifying or diminishing. It can either help or it can harm your primary mindset. Your mindsets need to work together. Now, if this seems too cerebral for any of you, I apologize, but the reality is the way you filter your thoughts and your leadership and your decision making will impact your effectiveness. Not only that, it'll impact every aspect of your life. We'll see later on, it'll impact your family, it'll impact your friends, it'll impact the success in your organization, because if you have a negative secondary mindset, it will diminish your primary mindset. But if you have a positive secondary mindset, it will magnify your primary mindset, secondary mindset to primary mindset relationship. So, all right, so let's dig into this a little bit. It was easy for me to define my secondary mindset. Early on, as early as junior high, I was a leader. I sought others' leadership. I saw that really exemplified in my high school journey. And it's easy for me to look back and how it informed my day to day. I was born to lead, and I make no apologies there. I seek leadership. I seek leadership not for myself, but how I can build others in their leadership. I've always been a leadership developer, and it's something that I'm passionate about and I really love. And so much so, let me tell you a story that should be humorous to you. I grew my kid when we raised our kids. I was always looking for those leadership lessons in every single thing that we did, and I would find a little leadership lesson and I would impart that, to the point that my kids probably got very tired of it. But there was one case where, now you got to let me paint the picture first. My son is a long distance runner. He runs and runs and runs, and before he was married, he was active in sports and running, and he was the athlete, and my daughter is the creative. She's the one that has got a servant's heart, and she loves to create. She's a graphic artist, and she does all that creation. But because of that, because of the distinct differences, Brian was the athlete, Alyssa was the creative. She wasn't as athletic, and so somewhere around middle school, I don't remember when the exact grade it was, but Alyssa said, I was trying to challenge Alyssa to be more active in sports, or be more active with a program of exercise or something physical to get her out, and even encouraging her that it helps the creative mind. And so we got to a point where one day I said, "Hey, baby, why don't you come out with Daddy and jog with Daddy in the mornings?" And she's like, "Okay, Daddy, I can do that." And so the morning came and we were going to run together, and it took about 12 and a half feet before Alyssa realized that she doesn't like running. And so she started walking, and then I would try to push her to run, and she'd walk, and I'd push her to run, and she'd walk. And so I came up with a plan. I said, why don't we walk one block and run one block? Walk one block, run one block. She's like, "Okay, Daddy, we can do that." So we started off. We started running a block and then walking a block and running a block and walking a block. But I noticed something very specific, that she was cutting the ends off. In other words, typical city block, you have a block and then you have a street, and then you have a block and then you have a street. Well, she was walking the street, walking the block, walking the street, and running the block. Walking the street, walking the block, walking the street, running the block. So I noticed that right away. So I started in a little bit about my history. Those at NOBA know some of my history. I've run successful businesses. I've grown companies over my early years of ministry. So my children are used to that Daddy being both a business owner and in the ministry. And And so I said to my daughter, I said, baby, what if I had an employee that, and here we're walking, right? We're walking, and I'm saying, hey, baby, I want to talk to you about something. What if daddy has an employee that every morning he punches the clock and he punches in at 8:05 or 8:10. And then I noticed that every evening he punches out at 5 minutes to 5 or 10 minutes to 5 or sometimes even 15 minutes to 5. And she's like, he wouldn't be a very good employee, Daddy. I said, well, what if I had an employee that punched in at 15 minutes to 8 every morning and sometimes 5:30 at night? He was punching in really early and punching out really late. I said, what would that say about him? I said, oh, that's a good employee. But why is that a good employee? Well, because he's not, he's busy working, and so he misses the time to punch out, and he really cares about his job. And she said some other things. And I said, you're exactly right, baby. That's exactly right. And then I looked at her and I said, you know what? I noticed that you've been punching in late and punching out early. And she goes, what do you mean, Daddy? I said, don't think I didn't notice that you've been walking the block, walking the street, walking the block, walking the street, and then running. I said, what do you say this next time we coming up to the next street? What do you say we run the street, run the block, run the street, and walk the next block? Why don't we punch in early and punch out late? She goes, okay, Daddy. And I'm waiting as we're walking up to this next block to see if she learned the lesson that I brought, my leadership skills, imparting to her and all of that. And sure enough, we hit the curb on the far side and she starts running across the street. And I'm beaming. I mean, I'm so happy. She learned my leadership lesson. Yet again, Dad has imparted his leadership lessons to his child. And so she's running across the street and she's up on the curb and she's running across the block. And about halfway through the block or whatever, she just stops, tired, and she starts breathing. And she starts walking. And I'm like, wait. What are you doing, baby? We made a deal. You're going to punch in early and you're going to punch out late. She looked at me, serious as can be, and she says, Daddy, even your best employees get a lunch break. Boom, she had me hands down, and I laughed, she had me, but she knew that she knew my leadership development culture in raising my children enough to know where she could process that, think through it, find her own applicable reasons to walk just a portion of that block and slap me right back in the face with it. So that's one of my most cherished memories of my daughter. But it illustrates the fact that my secondary mindset is that of leadership. I'm always looking at how to build leaders. And you need to define what your secondary mindset is to build and to accentuate your primary mindset. Okay, so now I'm going to throw some things at you, because like a primary mindset, once you've defined your secondary mindset and you've determined that it's going to either magnify or diminish your primary mindset, things become a lot clearer for you, right? So for example, if you have, I'm sorry, I went back on the slides here. If you have a secondary mindset that is a positive mindset, it magnifies your primary mindset. So as leadership is a positive mindset, right? I'm always looking to build leaders. When I meet people for the very first time, I'm saying, how can I give myself to them to build them as a leader? Or if they're sharing a situation with me, I'm thinking, okay, can I speak into that situation to make them a better leader? I'm habitual on that, and I'm always thinking that way. And that magnifies my relationship with Christ, and it magnifies my ability to, if it's a non-Christian, to share the gospel of Christ with that person, because leadership is a positive mindset. And I've identified it, so I've learned to leverage it against my primary mindset. Once you learn your secondary mindset, you can learn to leverage it toward your primary mindset. And that's very important for leaders. What happens if you have a negative mindset? Well, negative mindsets diminish your primary mindset, regardless of what your primary mindset is. We're talking about the mindset of Christ here because we're talking to Christian leaders. But negative mindsets diminish Christ in your life. And you have to be aware of that, because it can be really, really bad. So how many people do you know, think about this for a second, how many people do you encounter in ministry and whatever, that everything they view, their whole life context, maybe even their purpose for life is seen through victimization. They're always the victim. Everybody's always taking advantage of them. They can't succeed because of how everybody else treats them. And the victimization mindset is very negative, and it's destructive to a mindset of Christ. How about insecurity or cynicism? How do these things, how many, as associational leaders, how many pastors that you see have grown so cynical in their life that it's destroying their ministry? A negative mindset diminishes Christ. And so it can just burn up. It burns you up from the inside. Christ becomes very small, and they start to live through their secondary mindset. That's why it's so important to define what your secondary mindset is, especially in the ministry. Let's look at 3 more, because this serves as a warning for us. What about politics? If nothing else, listen, I'm going to come back to politics. Resentment, anger. These are all negative mindsets that diminish Christ in our lives as leaders, and it diminishes our ministry. I know men that talk, friends of mine, that would rather talk politics than talk Christ. They are so riled up about this or that, regardless of what side of the aisle it's on. It's all about politics. It's all about border. It's all about inflation. It's all about this. It's all about that. And you can talk to them for an hour or two and it's all politics and nothing about Christ, because they've let their secondary mindset overwhelm them and destroy them and diminish Christ in their life. Listen, let me send a warning to you. That is a super dangerous place to be. Living with a prolonged, detrimental secondary mindset poses a real and present danger. Listen, because if you live there too long, it can flip. And what I mean by that is it can literally flip. Your secondary mindset becomes your primary mindset, and your primary mindset becomes your secondary mindset. And if this happens, if all you're filtering through, everything is politics, resentment, anger, victimization, cynicism, whatever else, whatever your negative mindset may be as a secondary mindset, you are in serious danger, especially as a person who works in the church. So you need to beware if more talk is coming from you in the political realm than it is Christ and Him alone, then you're in the danger zone. If everything is filled with resentment or anger or hostility or cynicism or victimization or whatever else, if everything in your life is somebody else's fault, if it's the national denomination, if it's the convention office, or if it's these pastors are always this or that, you are in serious danger. I beg you, make your primary mindset that of Christ and get rid of your secondary mindset and swap it out for something that's positive. If you can honestly be honest with yourself in the presence of God, and you realize that you have a secondary mindset that diminishes Christ in your life, then you need to ask the Lord to remove it, get rid of it. Take whatever you can to sweep that secondary mindset out of your mind, out of your thoughts, out of your promise. Turn off the television if it's politics. Just get away from it, clean it out, and swap it with a secondary mindset that magnifies Christ. You have to switch it out. You are in serious danger if you don't. You risk loss of, if you flipped to Christ being your secondary mindset, the loss of your ministry, the loss of your family, the loss of your friends is imminent. I really, truly believe that. You will not continue in the ministry if you've swapped your primary mindset for your secondary one. Even you run a risk of that, even if it's a positive secondary mindset. Your primary mindset must be that of Christ. No excuses, no rationale, no nothing. It has to be Christ. And if it's negative, you got to get rid of it. You absolutely, positively have to get rid of it. And then once you get adept at this, once you begin to replace a harmful secondary mindset with a helpful secondary mindset, and you begin to process there and work there, you need to start thinking and asking the question, okay, what's my tertiary mindset? What's the next mindset in the mix? And this is only a recent revelation for me. I've been going for decades just knowing that my secondary mindset is that of leadership, and it informs everything that I do. And I've only recently began to think about, okay, so what is my tertiary mindset. And I think my tertiary mindset, if I could self-identify here, I think it's based in my secondary mindset. I've been thinking that all these years I've been looking at people and say, how do I make them a better leader? But what I fail to do in so many cases is empower them to be that better leader. So I care to believe that my tertiary mindset is one of empowerment, and I'm working constantly to change my leadership mindset to one of leadership with empowerment underneath it. So instead of just asking the question, okay, how can I make this person a better leader? How can I introduce them to someone that can help them on their journey? What skills can I bring to this person's life that would make them a better leader? I'm thinking at a deeper level and saying, okay, how do I empower them to be better leaders? Listen, the church has been historically good at academics, but not practicality. So we teach people they need to evangelize. We teach people they need to disciple. We teach people, but we don't disciple them. We've lost 2 generations of people because we're not discipling them to make disciples. That's where the empowerment comes in. And even in this leadership journey with me, I'm understanding that a lot of it was academic, and I need to make it practical and empower people to be better leaders. So that's my journey. I don't know what your tertiary mindset is. Many of you have never even thought of your secondary mindset, but I hope that after today, you'll be able to process not only your secondary mindset, but begin to crack the nut a little bit and ask the question about your tertiary mindset as well. All right, so let's recap. Your primary mindset must be of Christ. 2, your secondary mindset will magnify or diminish Christ. 3, prolonged ministry in a detrimental secondary mindset is a recipe for disaster. I hope it was helpful today, what I've brought to the table. I'd ask you to follow me. Any social media, you can get me by typing that in the URL /BrRickCurtis. So if you wanted to see my Instagram, Instagram.com /BrRickCurtis. Facebook, Facebook.com /BrRickCurtis. YouTube, that's where I place my leadership videos. That's where this video is going to be. YouTube.com /BrRickCurtis. Everything's there at BR Rick Curtis. I'd encourage you to follow me in some way, and I hope I can be assistance to you. NOBA crowd, I said this to you yesterday. Feel free to reach out to me, rcurtis@nam.net. Anything you need, consider me a tool in your belt. I appreciate what you guys do. You are leaders of leaders. You are awesome at what you do, and I thank you for desiring to take what you do to the next level, and I hope I can play a small part in that. Thank you very much for that. God bless you. Let me pray for you.